Hi, my name is Shireen Douglas, and I would like to welcome you to this episode of Power Stories. Now sit back, enjoy, and be prepared to be inspired. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the series of Power Stories. Power Stories is the series of basically powerful women coming together to tell us about their stories of empowerment in their life. And we're here just to hold space for that and to celebrate that. And so far there've been so many powerful stories that has inspired and even empowered other women to make moves and changes in their life, which has been beautiful to hear. If you don't know me, my name is Shireen Douglas. I am an embodiment and empowerment coach. I am also an energy healer. But titles aside, I am a woman that likes to celebrate and support other women. I like to hold space for other women, and I'm a person that just likes to hold your hand while you're on your journey to reclaiming and activating your own personal power. So today we have the beautiful Joanne with us today. So I'm going to hand it over to Joanne and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Joanne, but most people call me JJ, and I'm known as JJ the Confidence Coach. That's what I do. I'm a confidence and mindset coach. I'm also a certified international Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway trainer with the Susan Jeffers Corporation, which is why behind me you'll see the Feel the Fear range of books. I run a really successful Feel the Fear coaching program for my company, which is called Ability Business Group, where I'm the CEO and coach, and also founder of the Confidence Queens Academy, which is my online women's community. We're a coaching and training platform, and it's my inner circle where I kind of hang out really as well. So that's all the sort of titles out the way. And I'm just really excited to be here and to be able to share my story. I do take pleasure in being able to share my story and hope that it's encouraging and inspiring and empowering, because it came from quite a difficult place. So I know that, when I spoke to Shireen earlier, she mentioned, a trigger warning, because my story does have some moments in there which are quite difficult, and we'll talk about domestic abuse. So that is just a trigger warning I wanted to just make sure that you have. And I want you to know also that if this is a topic that has impacted you, or something that you are struggling with, there is support out there. And hopefully you will find my story one that can be empowering and inspiring to you. But reach out. That's something that I didn't do for many reasons, which I'll share. But yeah, I just want you to know that, there's always somebody, whether it's me, I'm sure there's Shireen and other people in the group. We are here to support each other, right? Regardless of what it is. So reach out and we can signpost, and in certain circumstances, we can just give you help as well. So I just wanted to make that really clear before I dive right into my story. So yeah, that's my intro. Should I just keep talking, Shireen, or I think you probably want to ask a question?
No, thank you. Thanks so much for that trigger warning. And if just to add to that, if you do find at any point that you're triggered, just before we get into it, I just want you to think about your resources that you might have. Like, just connecting to your breath, being in the present, going away, getting a cup of tea, at any point, if it gets a bit too much, step away, come back later, reach out. Just really look after yourself, really, is what I'm getting at. Yeah. Okay, so we've got, was it Kay and Medea in the comment section? Hello, thank you for watching. So what I'm going to do is towards the end, that's when I'm going to take questions from the comment section. So if there's any questions that you want to ask, feel free to put them in as we go, so you don't forget. and then I'll go back through the comment section at the end and pose them to Joanne. So let's get into the questioning. So the first two questions that I ask everyone is, what does power mean to you? I'll start off there, let you answer that one first.
Power to me, the different meanings for different types of power, but I want to focus more on two types of power, really. One which is more external, which is to the power, having power or being powerful is being able to inspire, being able to create change, and being able to stir up momentum. And one of the things that I focus on a lot is momentum, and creating life with momentum, and especially with setting goals and achieving goals and moving into the sort of energy where you are on a positive road, rather than and maintaining that positivity as you move along. So momentum is something that I do intentionally. I intend to create momentum in all the things that I do, so that I can keep going in the way that I'm intending to go, rather than slipping back into autopilot where I've been before, and I don't really want to have a life on autopilot anymore. So momentum is important to me. And so the sort of external parts of power is the inspiration, creating change, and stirring up momentum. And then I also want to talk about the internal power to me, because this is the personal power. This is the part of me that I didn't realize existed and that I didn't tap into. So it's really a poignant question, actually. And for me, internal power is the ability and the willingness to stand firm in your values, and also to stand firm in vulnerability, in that moment of vulnerability. I don't know if there's anything stronger than being in vulnerability and being vulnerable. And also being willing to be shaped and have empathy whilst in that vulnerable moment, and while standing in your values. Because when you have deep values, you have also learnings and experiences that you go through, and sometimes your values might change, but you have to be willing and open for the change. And then finally, I would say the main part about power for me, and my main learnings, is being able to feel any feeling and not running away from feelings. I think self-mastery, being able to feel all the feelings, is ultimate power, because it means then you get to do what the book says. You get to feel the fear and do it anyway, and you don't have the challenges that come up in life and stop you from being able to move forward. So being able to feel all the feelings is ultimate power.
Wow. Do you know what? I love everything, everything what you said there. Really recognizing from even the fact that you started with power, external power, like I recognize, I think it's more or less the same thing. You say momentum, I say, that the impact that you have on your environment, on people, on situations, it's that force that creates change. And then that internal power, like vulnerability, I think we're catching on to how powerful vulnerability is, and how much strength and courage is needed to be in front of, because I think for a long time vulnerability was so underestimated. Like now I call it that is my superpower. The ability to be vulnerable is my superpower, to be seen and witnessed.
Absolutely.
It's just because it does.
For me, vulnerability, for many, many, many years, vulnerability was my biggest fear. I had many, many fears, but vulnerability was my biggest fear. And the worst thing about it was I didn't even know or understand what vulnerability really was. And I just kind of avoided everything. And understanding vulnerability and the position it takes in our life, and being able to really stand in that vulnerable moment, it really when we think about vulnerability and we don't really understand it, we think it's a weakness, and we try not to be vulnerable, and we try not to show our vulnerability because we don't want to look weak, or we don't want to look stupid, or but actually, when you can actually be vulnerable and leave yourself way open, so that you're not preempting somebody else's response. You're not thinking in your head how you're going to respond, how you're going to act, how you're going to behave. You're not planning. You're just sitting there in the moment, and anything could happen. That is power. That is deep.
Absolutely. Because, in that moment, you are honoring your truth.
Yeah.
You're honoring how you're feeling, who you are, everything in that moment. It's just, you just are, you're being.
Yeah.
I love
but
that.
You're also honoring somebody else's truth, because you are allowing them to just respond naturally without also having that fear of your energy, letting them know that they don't like, or you don't like what they're about to say, or you're disappointed, or you're judging them. So you also, whilst honoring your own truth, you're honoring somebody else's truth by just being vulnerable in the moment and letting them behave and say whatever it is that they want to say, and whoever they want to be in that moment. That's a huge respect.
It is. I love that. And what else I love what you said is that feeling all the feels. Oh my goodness. Now that can be really scary, because I know, let's say for me, for instance, talk about myself. I know I feel very strongly. I'm quite empathic as well, so to sit and stay with my feelings, that again takes a lot of courage for people to do, to really fit, because sometimes they're uncomfortable, and who wants to be uncomfortable? But the fact that you can sit in the discomfort and you can feel it, that's power.
Powerful. Yeah, absolutely.
That is power.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
And that's a really important one. Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that. So the next question I've got for you is, when you are in your power and you're feeling really empowered, like, how do you feel in your body?
I find this question so awesome, because it's never really a question that people ask. And it really caused me to sort of examine myself and think about it. And the feelings in my body when I feel empowered is like tingling. It's like tingling all over my body. Like, when you get pins and needles, it's kind of like that, but it's a sort of a positive, not an awkwardy, kind of like bang your funny bones sort of feeling. It's a positive feeling that it's like any moment I could take off. At any moment I could take off, and also it makes me feel, at the same time, whilst I feel like I could take off, I also feel really rooted, really firm, really straight. Like my posture is good. Like I just feel in my body, I feel like I'm bubbling over, it's a lot of positive emotion. And I think when you feel empowered, if you feel empowered and you don't do something positive with that energy, then I feel like you've potentially lost a moment, because that is the starting point of the momentum. And in that moment, if you can actually embody and embrace that feeling in your physiology and take an action, that leads you to more actions, and the more actions leads you to more goals. Honestly, that feeling is, it's amazing. And I think that it's something we have to learn to actually stop and recognize and take action when we feel it, and use that energy for something positive.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm glad you said that. I think you're the first person I've heard say that. And when you say it, it makes sense, because it's like, why wouldn't you take action? Because you are totally in your power, you're feeling great. And like you said, it just starts off for that momentum as well. So thank you for saying that. And as well, like, every time I hear people answer this question, it goes to show, for me as an embodiment coach, it's like we can get our bodies into empowerment, because we all have a similar experience. It varies slightly from person to person, but like the fact that you feel strong in your body, your posture changes, you've got that thing, like it's very similar to other people. Like most people feel strong in the body. So it just shows, and I'm hoping the people at home know that, you know, these are things that they can start practicing. You know, if they're feeling a bit down or whatever and they want to be in the power, well, okay, one of the feelings is feeling strong in the body. Put my shoulders back, you know, stand up tall. It
That
makes a
posture.
difference.
It does. There's all those studies as well that talk about, you know, especially in the workplace as women as well, when you stand in that Wonder Woman pose, when you're feeling nervous, you know, because all of that energy comes through your posture. So getting in that Wonder Woman pose, looking in the mirror and doing your affirmations that way before you're about to walk into like some big heavy duty meeting changes the game for you. You know, the same when you're about to walk into a job interview or something, changes the game for you. Because when you can, as soon as you can shift that energy into your body, then you're able to embody what confidence is, or you know, or that feeling of power, even if it's just for a moment. Even if you just take advantage of it in that moment, it can shift you from point A to point B.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm so glad you say that, because some of the people that I work with do that. So we'll do affirmations, but we'll also move our body. Yeah. So not only are we telling it to our mind, but we're telling it to our body. Yes. So we fully believing and embodying and what we're saying and what we're being. Yeah. So now we're going to get into your story. I cannot wait to hear your story of empowerment. So again, if you just joined, there might be elements of this story that might be triggering for you. Please do look after yourself. If you feel like you need to shut down the computer and go, that's fine. If you need to touch base with me or anyone that you work with, please do. Just take care of yourself. Okay. Over to you, Joanne or JJ.
Okay. So let me see where I'm going to start. My story is even ongoing, so it's like I'm always living this story, and it just keeps developing in different shapes. But I'm going to start from some time ago when I was engaged, and as you can see, I'm not married now, but I was engaged at this point, and I was engaged, and I'm coming from a background of lots of failed relationships, lots of cheating and disloyalty and all of that stuff that, you know, a lot of young women go through. And but I was at this point engaged to someone, and he was a minister from a church, and I was heavily involved in the church at that time as well. And but this person who I was engaged to was emotionally abusive. At that moment, I ignored the red flags. And the reason why I realize it now, but I was ignoring red flags throughout many of my relationships until it got to the point where it was too late. I couldn't ignore it anymore. And it stemmed from the feeling I had growing up when I realized, when I didn't know my birth father, and I got to find out that my birth father knew of my birth and chose not to contact me. So I always had this feeling of being rejected, not being wanted, not being chosen. And so I'd always had this underlying feeling from childhood going through adulthood. And so in relationships, it was really there. I would ignore red flags because I really desired to be chosen. I wanted to be loved. I wanted someone to choose me, to want me, to care for me. And so at this moment, I was engaged to someone. Now, to be engaged to someone, you expect that person loves you, they want you, they choose you, right? And so I, at that point, not only was I engaged to a minister, so there was the whole faith and religious kind of aspect to it. But there was also the normal relationship between man and woman where, you kind of expect certain things and certain things can happen. So for me, in that moment, there was a lot of emotional abuse. And he would say things to me which were like, why can't you be more like so-and-so? You laugh too loud. Why can't you just speak when you're spoken to? You talk too much. You've always got an opinion. Why can't you just be quiet and let somebody ask you a question before you jump in and answer the questions? It was always, why don't you wear things like this? Why do you have to wear that? Or you've got such a party spirit. You know, I used to be part of 3 choirs. I sing, so I was part of 3 choirs. I lived in Birmingham at the time, so I was part of the Birmingham Community Choir. I was part of another community choir, and I was also part of my church choir. I was a worship leader. So a lot of the time I was at church singing and doing other things and singing. And so it's not like I was actually at parties. I was actually at church. But the fact that I was out of my house 4 days a week meant I had a party spirit, and I was going to go to hell because God would not be happy with me being out of my house all the time. So I had to give up everything that I was doing to be at home by myself because it gave him peace of mind. Things like that. And so that was kind of, you know, what I was going through at that point. And then there was the main thing for me, which was, if you can see on my head here, this scar. And I'll show you a little bit closer. This scar here, this indentation. I've had this scar since I was about 16 or 17. And it happened really not, you know, it's such a silly story. It happened when I was frying dumpling and oil, and I've got really high, you know, sensitive skin, and some oil flashed and it just caused a scar, okay? So, but he was really bothered by this scar. And so he said to me, he actually booked an appointment for me to get plastic surgery to have this scar removed 5 weeks before the wedding because he didn't want it to appear on the wedding pictures. That for me was the point where this was too much. And so I didn't know what to do at this point, because I was going to one of the biggest churches in Birmingham. There was over 1,000 members. At his church, which was also the same denomination, just around the corner, there was about 600 plus members. So there's over 1,600 people who are excited about this wedding. We've got the face of the worship leader, we've got the minister, and it was like, you know, some mini celebrity wedding. And so I was thinking, well, I've got to get married, because, you know, I'm the first grandchild, I'm the first daughter, my family's all looking forward to me getting married, I'm getting on now, and, you know, I'm in church, I have to, you know, what am I supposed to do? All of this pressure. Anyway, that long story short, I broke off the wedding 5 weeks before the wedding. And there was a lot of fallout from it. And, but the reason why I chose to start from that relationship was because the emotional abuse had started at that point. And then I was on a cycle. So that was probably the most poignant part of the emotional abuse that I faced. But then after that, I moved to London, then I moved to Dubai, and I lived in Dubai for 8 years. But whilst quite early on in my time in Dubai, I'd probably say after I'd been there for a year, I met someone, and he was from the UK, but he was raised in the Middle East. And so he was an Arab, even though he was British. And he was born in, you know, in Africa. Anyway, we met and we started a relationship. And it went, you know, quite quickly, but there were a lot of red flags. One of the red flags was that he was buying a house and he needed somewhere to live for a couple of weeks before his house would come through. And we were only maybe like a month in the relationship at that point. So I said, you know, stay with me for a couple of weeks rather than spending your money on the hotel. Stay with me for 2 weeks. And then by that time, your home will come through, and then you move into your new house. And that was, you know, but then it turns out that new house was a lie. He wasn't moving into anywhere. And I went to work one day, I came home from work, and he'd moved all of his stuff into my apartment. Now, in the UK, there were different rules to in the Middle East. In Dubai, man and woman can't live together. It's illegal. It meant that the person whose name is on the tenancy agreement would go to jail for 4 years. And also the law isn't in the favor of British women or British anybody, but especially British women, and especially British Black women. You know, let's not forget that that element. So I felt trapped. And also knowing him, he was raised in the Middle East. He had family members who were in the police force. There was a lot of things which were kind of, I didn't know what to do in that moment. So I said, okay, he's wants to live here. He's chosen me. I felt kind of special in that moment. Let's see how we can do this. Let's maybe, you know, I can't report him. I did ask him to leave. He didn't want to leave. He said let's live together, we're together. And so I thought, let's just make the best of this situation. Anyway, not long after that, he quit his job. And I had a good job. I was being paid a lot of money. And then all of a sudden, I was the only person who was working and supporting both of us. And then the moment I asked him to pay some of the bills, that's when the violence started. And it got pretty deep pretty quickly. So there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of fighting. And at that point, I can defend myself. I know karate, I know martial arts, but at the same time, I'm in a different country by myself. And I also had to think, if I really fight back and he really fights back, one of us is not going to do so well. And if that one person is me, I'm in this country by myself, and I feel like I've got a responsibility to my family to at least stay alive. And when this person was fighting me, he wasn't just a slap, and it was proper, bald patches in my head from braids being pulled out and hair can't grow back. It was violent. It was very vicious. And as there was one point when I was held hostage in my bedroom, sat against the wall at knife point for 3 days. I almost lost my job because I wasn't able to call and let them know that I couldn't go to work. Because he felt emasculated, that I was earning a lot of money, and he felt that I was trying to make him feel like less of a man. It went on, and I was in this situation where I was trapped because I didn't know what to do, because his cousin was a crime reporter for the biggest newspaper in Dubai. His family members were in the police force. If I said anything, and he spoke Arabic and all the different dialects, if I said anything, I didn't feel like I could do anything. So I kind of felt trapped and felt isolated. And it got to a point where I kind of shut down because there was a lot of gaslighting, and I would say something and he would make me feel like I was going mad. At one point, it tried to convince me that I needed help. And then when I sort of would say anything back, it got to a really, the hype point, the tipping point was right next to that scar. I've got 8 stitches in my forehead and a hump on my nose where I had a broken nose, where he hit me so hard with both of his fists that he shattered the bones in both of his hands on my face. So we went to the hospital, both of us, because at that point he had both of his hands in plaster and I had, stitches and a broken nose. And then obviously we ended up coming back home together, but his hands are in plaster. And I would look at him and I thought, how are you going to do anything? Because surely I'm not going to help you. But what would happen? Because at the first week, I refused, and I would watch him struggle. He didn't eat because it was too painful. He was struggled to go to the bathroom. He struggled to clean himself or to change any clothing. It was, and I sat there and I watched him struggle, and the hatred that I felt for him. I would wake up in the middle of the night and stare at him and think what could I do to this person? Because at that point, I was thinking very, very bad thoughts. And it was either going to be him or me. And so I thought, well, I can't take someone's life. And I thought about taking my own. I literally planned it. I planned how I was going to do it. I fantasized about it for about a month on how I was going to take my life. And then all of my faith and all the things that I learned from church and all of those feelings and all of those learnings came back to me. And I thought, I can't take my own life. So I don't know what to do now. And so for about 2 or 3 weeks, I was stuck. I was telling myself, I can't live with this and I can't take my life. So I don't know what to do. And it was in that moment where I say the thing that saved my life was making a decision. And that decision was to choose me. Because I had ignored so many red flags in my life, waiting for someone to choose me, that I'd never even chosen myself. Never even considered choosing myself, and never even thought about loving myself. I always just thought I need to be loved, I need to be loved, I need to be cared for, I need to be cherished, I need to be chosen. But I'd never done anything to do those things for myself. And I got to realize that people treat you the way you allow them to. That hurt. And it made complete sense, because I started to go back in my mind and think about, yeah, because I ignored the red flags. So I showed them how I could be treated. Not to say, and I don't want this to say that people who go through domestic violence deserve it or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm the last person to say something like that. But what I do want to say is sometimes the way we live, by setting ourselves aside, shows other people that they can set us aside as well. And people treat us by the cues we give them. And when we ignore red flags, we leave ourselves open to be mistreated, to be treated anyhow. And if we are striving through life to be waiting to be chosen and desperate to be chosen without choosing ourselves, then what are we actually wanting someone to choose when we don't even know who we are? So it was a whole lot that came to me and made me realize and go back in my life and realize that I'd been waiting for someone to choose me all my life because my dad never chose me. And I realized that's what it was. It started, but that all the way back then. And so just to sum up this story, the power for me came when I decided to choose myself. When I decided to choose myself, I said, okay, you know what? I have got to make a decision. If I'm going to live, I can't be on this autopilot waiting and searching for someone to love me. I got to love myself. I got to choose me. I got to start being intentional. I got to start trusting myself, listening to my intuition. I've got to start protecting myself. I've got to start looking out for these flags and knowing how to spot them, to the point that now my intuition picks up red flags before they even start waving at me. I got in touch with, like, personal development saved my life. Going on this journey of personal development and learning all the things that I've been able to learn, it took me years, and I'm still learning. I'm a lifelong learner, but it took me years to get into a place where I felt like I knew who I was and I knew who I wanted to be, and that I felt like I'd actually genuinely chosen me. So anybody else who chooses me, well, that's extra. That's great. It's bonus. I got me, so I'm good, right? But it was a long journey. And that's why now in my coaching and everything that I do, the message is to choose yourself first, always. And sometimes I get pushback from parents, because parents will say, no, we want to choose your kids. And I completely agree that, yes, obviously you got to love your kids. I'm not saying anything different. But what I'm going to say is, when your kids see you choose yourself, do you know what that's going to do for them? When they see mom buying themselves nice things, not just buying the kids nice things, do you know what that's going to do for your kids? So again, choose yourself first, always, because everybody will benefit, and everybody will benefit from that. And when you choose yourself, you actually empower yourself. And so I went through my whole life and I broke it down to bits. And so this is the coaching practice and the Confidence Queens Academy, and everything that I do now is based on these principles on which I built my life on, right? And there's a 4-step formula, which I've not really talked about much, but I'm going to talk about it today. The 4-step formula is courage, empowerment, action, and growth. And they all work together, and they all start, courage builds empowerment, which allows you to take action, which then moves, and when you take action, you grow. So they all work. And so now my whole life principle is based on this 4-step formula. And this runs throughout the Confidence Queens Academy. The modules are based on those 4-step formulas. It's a value system. Everything that I do is, okay, and I also say, put it down to 20 seconds of courage. I just need 20 seconds of courage. If I can find 20 seconds of courage to do the thing, then it's done. I'm going to feel empowered, and then I can do something else. And then I'm going to grow from that, and everything's a learning experience. And there's a quote that changed my life. And it's a quote by Nelson Mandela. And I love you, Nelson Mandela. Anyway, it's a quote by Nelson Mandela. And the quote is, I never lose. I either win or learn. And I built my business on that principle, because once you realize that you'd never lose, because in every situation, in every experience, no matter how painful, even in the heat of the violence that I've come from, the abuse that I've come from in my relationships, I realized the learnings that I've had from them. And actually, when you can have those situations and find a gift, and it's hard, it's so hard, but when you can find a gift, a learning, a lesson that you can share with other people, that's power. And when you can do that and turn that gift into something that continues to give, continues to grow, to allow other people to grow, that's where you will find you can find your purpose right in your mess, right there. That's when you can find your purpose. And so I feel like I've been talking for a long time. I don't know how long I'm supposed to be talking for, but I wanted to.
You know what? You're on the roll, and I think you're sharing so much beautiful, powerful medicine. I wanted you to get it out and share, because it's all beautiful. But I just want to take a minute, because what you've been through, the journey you've been on, and here you are, powerful, beautiful, sharing your wisdom and medicine, helping other women. And I don't know if you work with men as well, but just to be empowered, it's just like, can we take a minute? Like, wow, absolutely. Thank you for being of service. Thank you for sharing your message. Just thank you for making it here. Thank you. And I mean that from the heart. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, so there were a few questions I wanted to ask you. So I'm going to, if it's all right for you, I'm going to go back.
Yeah.
So I know you was talking about, like, the pattern started in your relationships with when you was engaged. Now, because we talk a lot about red flags, and it's quite a popular term, like, it's a bit of a buzzword now, isn't it, red flags? But sometimes I think especially when you've got a wound, like you saying that you wanted to be chosen because you had that rejection from the father, which I think lots of women that I know anyway can relate to in some way or form. Did you see the red flag? Because you said that what was the words that you chose? Did you see them and ignore them, or did you just not see them because you wanted to be chosen so much? Because sometimes It's like in hindsight, when we look back, we're going to go, well, that was bloody obvious. Like, how did I miss that? Do you know what I mean? That was like, woo, woo, woo. You know, it's like, are we seeing these red flags and just going, well, I can deal with that. That doesn't matter. And that's not like, are we just lying to ourselves, or are we not seeing them? Like, how was that for you, do you think, if you can think that far back?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I literally dissected my whole story, you know, in order for me to do what I do now. But there's a couple of times when I can definitely say, first of all, I think there's naivety plays a part in it. So sometimes, especially in the earlier stages of getting to, you know, being in relationships and figuring out the sort of womanhood side of you, I guess, there's some red flags that show up in the earlier stages where you don't necessarily know they're a red flag. And so those ones you don't really know, naive. And I think also in the beginning, when you're in relationships and you're young, you can often think, well, you know, they will change, or I will change, or you know, I can change them, and all of that sort of naive stuff, right? So I'm not going to really focus on that. But what I will say is, as an adult, when we are in an age when we actually do know better, what we often do, and definitely what I can say for myself did, was I downgraded red flags. I'd see a red flag and I'll downgrade it to amber. It's amber. It's not impossible to deal with that. It just means I need to put in more work. So we downgrade, you know, and some of them we do flat out ignore. And also what we do is we talk to our friends, and our friends might, you know, we have the two types of friends, right? We have the friends who will see, it's like you're driving your car, and they'll see, your friend will see you about to go down the, you know, drive down the cliff, and that friend will wait until you hit the bottom of the cliff and say, oh, you're all right, I saw you going down the cliff, I saw you, but I just thought I'd check if you're okay. And then you've got the friends who's going to run and say, stop, you're about to go down the cliff, stop. Right? The two types of friends, right? And so you have the friends who will see you about to make a huge error in judgment, and they're just going to think, well, I'll just be there and pick up the pieces, but I don't want to say anything in case it comes back on me. And it probably would have come back on them, to be honest. I had one friend who warned me. One friend said to me, where are you? You're like a shell of the Joanne that I know. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, right? So you have the friends who would watch you and then be there to pick up the pieces. And then you have the friends who would flat out do everything in their power to stop you from making the mistakes. And that's when you share your red flags with these friends, and those friends are going to help you to downgrade them into amber flags so you can move on and they can continue with the friendship, or they're going to really take a stance and make sure that you stop what you're about to do, or you break friends. And sometimes you have to be prepared to break friends with people, you know, to show your true friendship. Sometimes it gets like that. And so, yeah, I think what we do is we downgrade the red flags in order for us to have what we want and what we deeply desire. The thing that we think we've created this hole, or we feel like we have a hole that needs to be filled by something, but we don't realize we can fill it by ourselves. We try and fill it with other people. And so because the red flag is going to cause you to continue having this hole, you kind of downgrade it to amber or to yellow. It's not red, it's not the worst thing in the world. And we put ourselves aside. So I think as adults, we do see the red flags. I think we see them, and sometimes they can be like alarms. But what's worse than the alarm is that desire and the feeling of not being whole, that feeling of not being whole, because it is just a feeling. And so, yeah, I think we see the red flags, and we do what we can to avoid them, because it's a payoff, you know. I'd rather deal with this fear than that fear. And that's what we're doing with the red flags. I'd rather deal with this pain and pretend it's okay and not have to deal with emptiness or, you know, rejection, rather than actually process the red flag, because that might mean having to feel the rejection and be rejected. So that's my response.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I definitely agree that we do we do see them, but for different reasons we just ignore them or downgrade them. I like that one. So the next question I wanted to ask you, so what it sounded like is when you got engaged, you sounded like this bubbly, confident woman that was very involved in church life and happy. But with this, what I heard was this comparison and constantly putting you down kind of chipped away at you, that kind of disempowered you and, you know, took away your confidence. But, you know, during that time, because before you became disempowered and a shell of yourself, you was Joanne, you was JJ, you had all this confidence. Was there any pushback? Was there any moments where you was still in your power and you was like, I'm not having this, or, you know, you were still very much in your power, or what's the right question that I'm trying to ask? I don't know. Have I explained that well?
I think I got it. Yeah. And I'm going to be really honest, because that's what I do, right? There was no pushback. And I'll tell you why. Because it's a different element with the religion side, the faith side, created a different level. So there was also, as well as the emotional abuse and manipulation, there was spiritual and religious, this aspect of it, which was also manipulation as well, and spiritual abuse. So there was the fact that, you know, I was not that long baptized in church, and he was a minister. So in my mind, he would know better. So if he's saying that God is telling him something, well, he's got more experience with this whole God thing than I do, right? He's a minister. So when he would say something, there was that thing that would be, okay, if I step up and be the Joanne that would fight back and, you know, be all that confident, am I actually being of the world and not of God? Because there's all that element as well, right? And that I was raised in church. I was raised in church from the age of 1 year old, right? So there was a lot of misunderstanding and some misteaching as well, to be very honest. There's a lot of things that I learned from the church, my church life, which I had to reconcile as an adult to be able to tap into my faith and my spirituality as an adult, and realize where it was completely wrong when I was younger, and realize and how the church did play a huge part in all aspects, in even allowing it to get that far and not even doing anything about it when I did raise the issue. There's a whole lot of stuff with regards to church and religion and faith and all of that needs addressing. And just on that real quick, there's a really famous gospel singer. I think she was Nigerian, and she was murdered a few days ago by her husband through domestic violence, and so there's a lot of conversations happening now with regards to the church and people and their responsibility, and I recognize that from my own experiences. But so what I'll say is that there was no pushback. I think if there wasn't the church element, then yeah, there would have been more pushback, because in my previous relationships, there had been pushback. The cycle started not just at this relationship, it started already. But me being who I was, I did push back, and at the later stages, and then the relationships would end. You know, I literally had to wait until I found somebody cheating to end the relationship. In this moment, there was no pushback, because I just thought, well, he knows more because of the faith, the spirituality side. I thought, okay, if he's telling me that, you know, I've got a party spirit, then maybe I need to, you know, he's experienced in Christ, he's experienced in the church, and, you know, I am coming from, you know, a more party background. Maybe I do need to be in my house more often, and I would question myself. So I would say in that relationship, there was no pushback. In the relationship afterwards, where the physical violence happened, there was some pushback, but then that's what would happen is the level of violence would escalate, and then I realized that I couldn't push back because one of us wouldn't make it. So I had to make a decision in that moment. But yeah, in that relationship with the church, with the minister, there was no pushback. The pushback happened on the day when he'd set an appointment with me to go and see the consultant, and he dropped me off, and then he went to work and left me by myself to speak to this consultant. And this woman sat me down in the room and she said, so what do you want done? And I said, well, this scar on my head. And she's like, but that's small. This is a big thing you want to have done for that. She said, that's smaller than a 5 pence piece. You sure you want to go through this? And also the after effects would require a lot of excess skin peeling, and it's not going to be finished in 5 weeks, and your wedding is in 5 weeks. Are you sure you want to go through this procedure? I didn't want to go through it at all. And I didn't like the pressure that I was being put under. And so it was in that moment when I started to push back. And it got quite, it was quite high spirited, I guess. There was shouting. And the next day we happened to have, you know, when you're in church and you're about to get married, you get counseling from the pastor. And so we had a meeting with the pastor the next day, and I was quiet, and I was always quiet in those meetings because he would talk and say how happy we both were. And then the pastor said, listen, you're a few weeks away from your wedding and I've not heard from you, Joanne. And I just said, I can't do this. I said to him, this is what, you know, the relationship is like. And I started to tell the truth. And then the person I was engaged to railed up, and he was shouting and angry. And the pastor, the bishop who was doing the service and the meeting, he saw what this guy was like, and he was shocked because he'd never seen this guy raise his voice before. He's always softly spoken, and you know, it's really nice. And he said, you need to stop. He said, if you're like this with me here, God knows what you're like with Joanne. And at that point, I just felt, I don't have to say anything. Somebody else can see this. I'm not, you know. And so then the pastor said, well, you know, do you have any questions, Joanne? I said, yeah, if I got pregnant with you, if we got married and I had your baby, and then I, through childbirth, I end up getting lots of scars, lots of stretch marks or problems with my nerves, would you still love me? And he said, I don't know why you'd expect me to answer that question. I'm just a man. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just a man. And I thought, and then I said, yeah, the pastor said, Joanne, in your heart of hearts, do you want to marry him? And I said, no, I don't want to marry him. And that kicked off a whole lot of stress. And I think that was the biggest part of me fighting back. And then that's when I said, no, I'm definitely not going to marry him. And I said, and actually the same way you announced, because what they did was they announced the engagement in front at both churches in front of 1,600 people at the same time. I said, the same way you announced it, can you announce that the engagement's off? So all 1,600 people know it's off at the same time. And so that's what I did. So 1,600 people around Birmingham found out that the engagement of the year was off, which caused a whole lot of negative momentum. But yeah, that was my fighting back.
Wow. Wow. So did this experience have an impact on your faith?
Yeah, it completely threw me off. It completely, it threw me off. One, because not just with him, because that the situation of what he put me through, what I'd gone through in that situation, I was really confused. But what happened afterwards, the way that the church dealt with it or didn't deal with it, when I was trying to be, you know, do my job as a worship leader, and I would see people in the congregation and they weren't trying to worship, they were gossiping about me, they were pointing at me, they were side-eyeing me. Some of the older women who I'd gone through, you know, through church calling mother this, you know, mothers, were one of the comments, and I've actually got a post that I wrote yesterday to post about this. One of the comments that they said was, she must be one of those lesbians, that's why she's turning down this this nice man and breaking this nice man's heart. And that as I was walking out of service, she was maybe 2 people behind me, and she said it, and I heard, and I turned around and I couldn't believe it came out of Mother so-and-so's mouth. One of the women who I looked up to, who I thought cared about me, and all this gossip. And then I ended up given up my position as a worship leader because I was no longer able to lead people to worship because people would just gossip. And in the end, I left that church and I moved to London. I went to a different church, but I couldn't, I didn't know how to be in church anymore. I'd lost trust. And it took me a number of years to actually realize that church is just made up of people. Church isn't this big holy thing. It's just made up of individuals, and all of us, you know, we have bias, we have judgments, we're human beings, right? And so it took me a lot to actually say, my faith is not tied into church. I had to find the balance to be able to, you know, know what I believe in, whether it involved church or not. My belief was separate. And so, yeah, it did impact my faith. It impacted everything. But yeah, my faith has been able to survive. But then my understanding of church has completely changed now.
Yeah, no, yeah, I can relate to that for sure. And because of what I hear as well, because I thought it must have had an impact then, but then when you talk about your violent relationship and wanting to end your life, it sounds like faith was the very thing to save you in that moment as everything came back to you.
Yeah, it was 100%. If I wasn't raised in church, if I didn't have the faith, I wouldn't be here right now. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you that, because it was that faith that made me say, you're not allowed. This is like the biggest sin. This is the thing. This is like, you can't, you didn't give yourself life. You can't take that life. It doesn't belong to you. And that was the very thing that's why I'm here. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. Because like I said, I planned it. I knew what I was going to do. And I was very, very close. So yeah, if it wasn't for my faith, I wouldn't be here.
Well, thank you for your faith. Thank you. Right. So what I'm going to do now, because literally I feel like I could sit here and talk to you for another hour. Honestly, it's been amazing. I'm going to go to the comment section because there's been loads of interaction, and see what they're saying, and if they've got any questions for you.
Sure.
So let's have a look. See, we've got hello. Managed to join. There's quite a few people here.
Awesome.
Let's see. Ashley was saying, also this must have been from the beginning. I practice tree pose before I do an exam, and that does help me feel grounded and empowered. It makes me feel strong mentally and physically. Love yoga poses. Absolutely. Okay. Wow. Choosing self is powerful. 100%. Absolutely. Self first, but not only. What an inspiration. Literally got goosebumps when you said, I choose me. That's from Ashley. Yes, no losses, only lessons. Keep sharing, sis. It's beautiful. See, I can totally relate to the church experience, says Alex or Alexa. So Alexa, how did Joanne get out of relationship she was in Dubai? Alexa asks. Are you okay to answer that?
Yeah, sure. You know what? So I had to play the long, and I made a decision that this personal development journey that I was on, I made a decision to play the long game, because I know that I was going to be able to find a way out. I just didn't know what it was. And I knew that I couldn't die in the process. And so I had to play the long game. And I kind of shut down a big part of me, and I was inundated with this personal development. I also, at the second part of me was the work. I had this thriving career managing revenue for global law firms. So I traveled a lot, which was great because it got me out of the house. But what I started to do then was, which also wasn't good, was I buried myself in work and spending 15 hours a day at work, and burnt out until I couldn't work for a while because I just burnt out. So I was at home more. And so anyway, I got stuck into the personal development game, and what I decided to do was play the long game. And what happened was, he wasn't working. So I thought, okay, I need him to get a job. I need him to get out of the house some point. he refused to leave the house because he knew I'd lock him out. So he wouldn't leave. So I had to befriend him kind of, and be a bit kind of devious, I guess, in order to get him to leave. And something happened, and I believe this has to have been God, because he got a phone call from somebody he hadn't spoken to for many years, who was based in London, and said, I've got this really big opportunity, job opportunity. It's in London for 1 month. Can you come to London for 1 month? There's these really, like this sheikh and some Arab men, wealthy Arab men, who want to buy property, but they need somebody who deals with property and who can translate Arabic. And this was his forte. So I convinced him for about 3 weeks. I convinced him to take this job opportunity, to go, it's gonna be so good, and it's gonna bring some money into the house and blah, blah, blah. So he went, and it was on Valentine's Day, which was his flight out. So I went with him to the airport. I saw him, I waved at him as he went through the part of no return. I turned around and I didn't even go home. I went straight to the real estate and I found the property. Now, the thing is, in Dubai, you have to pay your rent a year in advance. And it just so happened I had maybe 2 or 3 months left. So what I was able to do was think, okay, I'll forego and lose the 3 months, because I had enough money, and I got some money from my workplace to help me to pay for a year in advance for a property, to rent the property a year in advance, and I moved. And so literally within that 2-day space, I moved out. I changed my job as well. So I quit my job and I found another job, and it was really literally within half an hour, because Dubai is not a big place. So within half an hour, you know, I was living around half an hour away and working literally 20 minutes away from my last job. But and you know what? That day on Valentine's Day at the airport was the last time I ever saw him. He came back. I'd emailed him and told him, you should stay in the UK a bit longer, because we're finished and I'm no longer there, and you won't have anywhere to live. And so don't come back here until you've got some money to be prepared to find somewhere. And he came back straight away and tried to find me. He went to my old workplace. He threatened people. He did everything he could. He sent me aggressive emails. He threatened my family. He did everything he could. He actually, he was narcissistic, sociopathic. He actually tried to find me for 4 years. Even after I'd moved back to the UK, he was still sending me emails and threatening my family, and sending photographs that he'd taken of me while I was asleep that I didn't know about, and saying he's going to send them to my workplace, and all of this really abusive and aggressive. Yeah, that's what he was doing. So it continued for 4 years after we'd broken up. And but yeah, that's how I got away from him. And even to this day, he could appear. He could appear, you know. But yeah, I think it was in that decision to say, you know what, something's going to happen, something's going to come up, and I'm going to be able to leave. I don't know what it is, but I'm just going to surrender to whatever I'm going through now and keep working and focusing on choosing me every single day until something comes up. And then something came up and I was able to move and change my whole life. And on the last day, when I was leaving Dubai to go back to the UK, one of my friends said to me, don't turn around, because about 2 people behind you is so-and-so, my ex-partner. And I said, okay, let's go. I didn't turn around. We walked right out of my surprise goodbye party. We walked right out. I didn't even look at him, and we went somewhere else. And so I haven't seen him since the day at the airport when I said goodbye. And that's how I left him.
Wow. Wow.
Make a movie, right?
I'm telling you, that's, yeah, wow. Yeah. Oh, wow. Do you know what? Thank you so much for sharing with us. I think, yeah, is that all the questions? Yeah, thank you so much. It's been powerful, it's been insightful, it's been inspiring. Like, you've definitely given somebody hope. Some affirmations in there. I see, you know, choose me, choose you first. Yeah. JJ, you have always been a great inspiration to me. Thank you for sharing. I thank God for your life. Love you, sis. Oh, wait. Oh, hang on. I thank God for your life. JJ has been my coach. I've done 2 of her programs, and she has helped me to make huge changes in my life that continue to guide me now. She's power. Love you, sis. And that's from Kay.
Okay.
Now I can feel the power. I can feel the power. So what I would like to do now is just hand over a couple of minutes for you just to share a bit more about what it is you do, where people can contact you, and anything else, any services or products you got that people might want to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so a couple of things. You should have me on Facebook, and if you don't, then it's JJ the Confidence Coach, all in one, and that's my handle. Social media is practically the same, apart from on Instagram. My Instagram handle is JJ_ the Confidence Coach. And actually at 8:30 today and tomorrow and on Thursday, I'm hosting a mini series talking about self-acceptance. And today I'm talking about the courage of self-acceptance. So tonight at 8:30 on my Instagram account live, join me. And so basically every month within the Confidence Queens Academy, which is my training and coaching platform, where Kay is also a member, basically every month we go through the steps of how to choose yourself, how to develop confidence and live a life of meaning and intention. And so this month we're focusing on self-acceptance. And so what I do is I take the monthly theme and then I go and do host workshops and things like that on Instagram and on my other meetup groups. So you can find me on all platforms, even TikTok, JJ the Confidence Coach or JJ_ the Confidence Coach. And if you're interested in joining the Confidence Queens Academy, then the link is in my bio on Facebook, but the website is www.thecqacademy.com. And it's a membership, so it's a monthly membership, and you get access to around 60 plus courses, mini courses. I do bi-weekly coaching, drop-in sessions where you can get coaching from me. We have a personal development book club, and the book we're reading this month is The Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown. We have a quarterly meeting where we talk about money and budgeting and finances. So yeah, if you want to be part of that, then by all means visit the website, sign up. And yeah, I'd love to have you. If you're interested in developing your personal power and stepping into your courageous self and getting confidence to do whatever you need to do, then you can join my Feel the Fear program, which is a signature coaching program, which is what Kay did. Kay also did the Game Changer program, which is a career development program that I do. I do a lot of executive career coaching. And so that's a career development program that I have to help people to advance in their careers and businesses. So there's a lot of things that I do. Tap into me, let me know if you're interested in anything, and I'm surely willing to and happy to support you.
Amazing. So if it's okay with you, Joanne, would you send me over the links and information? Yeah. And then what I'll do is I'll put them into the group. So then people who are in will know where to find you and can click on all the links and stuff.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, someone was asking. Yeah. So we'll do that. We'll when Joanne sends over the links, I'll put them all in the group, and then you'll have all the information there together. It sounds amazing. Sounds really amazing. Thank you. So we've run a little bit over. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom and your medicine. Thank you so much. I do not take it for granted one bit. It's been such a beautiful, teaching and learning for me, just to sit here and hold space and witness. So thank you for that. I hold you in such high regard. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you
for allowing me to be here.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Thank you for everybody at home that's interacted and watching and giving us all the hearts. Really appreciate you. And that's the